All right, let's cut the crap. We're diving into anarchy today. I know what you're thinking. Chaos. Molotovs, those edgy dudes in the Guy Fawkes masks.
Yeah.
Turns out it's a hell of a lot more nuanced than that.
Anarchy gets a bad rap. People just think about smashing the state, but it's way deeper than that.
Deeper.
Yeah, it's really about rethinking how we organize ourselves, like, from the ground up.
Rethinking everything. Sounds kind of ambitious, doesn't it?
Ambitious maybe, but it's not some new age bullshit. We're talking deep historical roots here.
Like what?
The Wikipedia article on anarchism traces this shit back to ancient Greece.
Ancient Greece? You're telling me those toga-wearing philosophers were into anarchy?
Well, not anarchy as we know it today, but those dudes had some seriously anti-authoritarian thinkers. Take Zeno of Citium, for example.
Zeno who?
Zeno of Citium, he envisioned a world without a state, which was pretty radical for his time. And let's not forget Socrates.
Socrates.
Yeah, that dude was always calling out the Athenian government's bullshit.
So are we saying anarchy is just philosophy 101 with a little more edge?
Nah, it's more than just philosophical Philosophical anarchism is definitely part of it, but anarchism as a movement really took shape in the 19th century.
19th century?
Yeah, with thinkers like Pierre-Joseph Proudhon. This guy was a total firebrand. He dropped the famous line, "Property is theft."
Hold up. Property is theft. That's some next level shit, even for this show.
Proudhon was a radical dude. He believed in mutualism.
Mutualism.
It's a system where people cooperate and exchange goods based on mutual benefit. No state intervention or capitalist exploitation involved.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this no state thing could maybe work. But how do you stop things from turning into a Mad Max free-for-all?
Right.
Who's going to keep the assads in check?
That's where different schools of anarchist thought come in. Some, like Mikhail Bakunin and the collectivist anarchists, were all about revolution.
Revolution, huh?
They believed the state needed to be overthrown by force and replaced with a system where workers collectively own and manage everything.
Revolution, huh?
Yeah.
We're talking barricades, Molotovs, the whole shebang.
It's not always about violent revolution. You've also got evolutionary anarchists.
Evolutionary anarchists.
These guys believe in gradually building alternative systems and institutions outside the state, things like worker cooperatives and mutual aid networks.
They're like communes and shit.
Kind of. They think that eventually the state will just become irrelevant because people will have better ways to organize themselves.
So it's like building a better mousetrap, and people will ditch the government cheese.
Exactly. Create systems that actually work for people based on cooperation and solidarity, and the state becomes obsolete.
Yeah, this is starting to make sense, but let's talk about that whole anarchy equals chaos stereotype. How do anarchists deal with things like crime and violence?
That's a question anarchists have wrestled with for a long time. Some, like the anarcho-pacifists, believe in complete nonviolence. Others advocate for self-defense and community-based justice systems.
Vigilante justice.
Not exactly, but they all agree on one thing. The state is often the biggest perpetrator of violence itself.
That's a good point. So we've got ancient Greek philosophers, pissed off French dudes, yelling about property, and a whole spectrum of ideas about how to make anarchy work. There's a lot to unpack.
We're just scratching the surface here.
Oh.
But here's where things get really interesting. Anarchy isn't just about abstract theories. It's influenced a ton of real-world movements and events.
Like what? Give me some examples. I need something concrete to wrap my head around this.
Well, anarchists played a key role in the Paris Commune of 1871. They were also a major force in the Russian Revolution and the Spanish Civil War.
Those are some pretty big deals.
Now, more recently, anarchist ideas have been influential in movements like Occupy Wall Street and the Zapatistas in Mexico.
Wait, Occupy. I remember that all those tents in Zuccotti Park, the drum circles, it definitely had that anarchist vibe.
Occupy was a prime example of anarchist principles in action. It was decentralized, leaderless, and focused on direct action and challenging corporate power.
I'm noticing a pattern here. Anarchists aren't afraid to get their hands dirty, whether it's through protest, building alternative communities, or even full-blown revolution.
Exactly. Anarchy is about putting ideas into action. It's about constantly questioning and challenging systems of power, from the state to capitalism to even those ingrained hierarchies in our daily lives.
So even if we somehow got rid of governments, we might just recreate the same messed up power structures in our everyday lives.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we're going to explore as we dive deeper into the world of anarchy. Welcome back. Let's dig deeper into how anarchy actually plays out in the real world. One of the most interesting periods is the late 19th and early 20th centuries.
Okay.
This is when you see a surge of anarchist-inspired actions, some more intense than others.
Are we talking about that propaganda, the deed stuff? Because blowing shit up doesn't exactly scream peaceful utopia to me.
You're right. Violence isn't exactly a recipe for a perfect society. And to be fair, not all anarchists were down with that approach, but back then there was a real sense of urgency. Yeah. Many anarchists saw the state as inherently violent and oppressive. They felt they had to fight back, even if it meant using force.
So they thought a few bombs would light a fire under the revolution.
It was a chaotic time. Huge strikes, labor uprisings, and growing awareness of the inequalities of capitalism. Some anarchists saw violence as the only way to make real change.
Did it work?
That's debatable. It definitely grabbed people's attention, but it also led to a massive crackdown. Governments went after anarchist groups, labeling them as terrorists and passing laws specifically targeting them. It's a complex and often tragic chapter in anarchist history.
Yeah, not exactly the best PR move.
Yeah.
So what happened after the dust settled? Did anarchism just disappear?
Not a chance. It went through a period of reevaluation and change. New schools of thought emerged.
Like what?
Like anarcho-syndicalism.
Anarcho-syndicalism.
Which focused on organizing workers through unions to challenge both the state and capitalist power.
Unions? So more like solidarity forever than dynamite tonight?
Exactly. It was a more strategic, long-term approach. Anarcho-syndicalists believed that strong, independent unions could empower workers to eventually take control of the means of production and create a society based on self-management.
Okay, that makes sense. But I'm guessing it wasn't smooth sailing for the anarchists, even with a less blow shit up approach.
You're right. The rise of authoritarian regimes like Stalin's Soviet Union was a huge setback for anarchist movements worldwide. They were often seen as a threat by both communist and capitalist governments.
Yeah, I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
So where does that leave anarchy today? Is it still relevant in the 21st century?
Absolutely. In recent decades, anarchist ideas have seen a resurgence, especially in anti-globalization movements, environmental activism, and even the tech world.
The tech world? I thought those Silicon Valley guys were all about disrupting shit and making billions. How does anarchy fit into that?
It's more about the underlying philosophy of decentralization and challenging established power structures. Think about things like open source software, peer-to-peer networks, and the whole cypherpunk movement. They're all about creating systems that are more democratic, transparent, and resistant to control by corporations or governments.
So it's like digital anarchy, hacking the system from the inside out.
You could say that, and don't forget about contemporary activist movements like Occupy Wall Street and the Zapatistas. Both have been heavily influenced by anarchist principles.
Occupy again. It seems like whenever people get fed up with the system, anarchist ideas start popping up.
It makes sense when you think about it. When people feel powerless and see systems failing them, they start looking for alternatives. And anarchy, with its focus on direct action, mutual aid, and challenging authority, offers a powerful set of tools for creating change.
So anarchy is more than just chaos and bombs. It's a philosophy, a movement, a way of seeing the world and envisioning a different future. I'm starting to get it, but can it actually work in the real world?
That's the question that anarchists have been wrestling with for centuries. And there are no easy answers, but I think that's the point. Anarchy isn't about finding some perfect blueprint for society. It's about constantly questioning, experimenting, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, that sounds like a challenge.
It is, and there's something else to consider. A lot of anarchist thought isn't just about changing the political system.
Okay.
It's about changing ourselves. It's about examining the ways we contribute to power dynamics and hierarchies in our daily lives, even in seemingly small ways.
So even if we got rid of governments, we might just recreate the same messed up power structures in our everyday interactions.
Exactly. It's not just about smashing the state. It's about examining our own roles in perpetuating these power dynamics. It's a much deeper, more personal challenge, and that's something I think is particularly relevant today as we grapple with issues like social justice, economic inequality, and the climate crisis.
Okay, so we've covered the historical context and some of the core ideas behind anarchy, but what does this all mean for the average person? What can we actually learn from all this anarchist stuff? Okay, so we talked about all that history and the different anarchist ideas and all that, but what does it all mean for like regular people? Can we actually use any of this anarchist stuff in our own lives or what?
That's the big question, right? And honestly, I think there's a lot we can take away from anarchist thought, even if we don't want to go full-on revolutionary.
So you're saying we don't all have to start making bombs in our basements?
Probably not the best idea, but one of the key insights from anarchy is that power isn't just something out there. you know,
Okay.
in the hands of like politicians and corporations.
Right.
It's embedded in all our relationships and the ways we interact with each other, in the subtle hierarchies we often take for granted.
So even our everyday choices can be like a form of resistance.
Absolutely. Choosing to support a local co-op instead of a giant supermarket chain, getting involved in community organizing, questioning those traditional gender roles that society tries to shove down our throats. Those are all little acts of anarchy.
Mm.
They're ways of pushing back against those dominant power structures and creating a more just and equitable world.
I like that it's not just about tearing everything down. It's about building something better, something more human from the ground up.
Exactly. And another crucial lesson from anarchy is the importance of direct action. It's not about waiting for some politician to save us or hoping that corporations will suddenly develop a conscience.
Right.
It's about taking matters into our own hands, organizing with others, and making the changes we want to see in the world.
Direct action.
Ah,
So protests, mutual aid networks, building alternative communities, the whole 9 yards.
exactly. It's about being proactive, engaged, and refusing to just sit back and watch while things go to shit. And it's something anyone can do no matter who they are or what they believe in.
All right, you've convinced me anarchy is officially cool.
Yeah.
But let's be real for a second. Is a truly anarchist society actually possible? I mean, we're talking about humans here, and we can be a pretty messed up species.
That's the eternal question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And to be honest, nobody knows for sure. But I think the beauty of anarchy is that it's not about reaching some perfect utopia. It's about always striving for a better world, recognizing that we're all flawed and imperfect, and working together to create a society based on mutual respect, cooperation, and freedom.
Damn, that's almost poetic. All right, listeners, we've thrown a lot of information at you today. Ancient Greeks, revolutionaries, union organizers, even some digital hackers. But here's the bottom line. Anarchy is about more than just chaos and destruction. It's about questioning everything, challenging power, and taking responsibility for creating the world we want to live in.
And the real question isn't, can anarchy work, but what kind of world do we want to create? That's for you to decide.
And on that note, we're out here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the wild world of anarchy. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo. Peace out.